nervous or scared when you decided to create Joyfully?
I was definitely nervous and scared. When I started the company, it actually had a different name, and a very large company told me I couldn't use that name. So it kind of was scary right in the beginning. I had to stop production and I had to change the name. So yes, I had fears very, very early on. But from the beginning, I was determined. I wasn't going to let being afraid of something stop me. So I pushed forward. But yes, I had a lot of anxiety, especially in the beginning.
What were your biggest fears for creating the company?
Well, I think initially my biggest fear is that I'd go forward with a product and nobody would buy it, that no one would like what I liked, that, I don't know, I would put something out there and there'd just be silence, crickets. And I think that was probably my biggest fear in the beginning. Or just the fear, too, that, I wouldn't have enough money or there'd be debt. And so part of how I started the company, because I was so debt adverse, is that I didn't take on any debt. I would only grow out of the profits that I had and that I made. And because owing somebody a lot of money was not a livable circumstance to me. So I would only order as much as I knew I could afford. And I attribute that to one of the reasons we're still in business today, is that my risk level was really incremental, and to this day we're a debt-free company.
Did those fears ever hold you back? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think fears can hold you back, especially if you get so in your head that it immobilizes the next steps. I think that's counterproductive. So when I find fear holding me back, one of the things that really helps is to actually think, okay, what's the worst that could happen? If I order this product and nobody buys it, what then? One of the things that worries me and still does really is bigger overhead. So like going into a bigger office space. So I've always tried to think through if this doesn't work out, what's the worst that could happen? So for example, our office space is a building that I own, and it can be split into two parts and leased separately. So that was a way to minimize my risk. And so that was one of the things I was constantly doing, was making risk assessments. How much risk felt okay to me? How much felt like too much? And I think it's a really important skill if you're growing a business. If fear is worrying you, play it out. What happens? What happens if your worst fear is actualized? What does that mean? And then kind of think through strategies. And if the worst isn't livable for you, then I would say take a step back and maybe look at a different way to accomplish your goal that manages that risk better.
Do you still have worries or fears for the company today?
Of course. I have worries or fears all the time. There's times where the only way I could sleep was I took Tylenol PM before bed. So it's not that bad now, but oh man, I've had chunks of time where that was the only way I could sleep. And if I didn't and I forget, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. like, oh my gosh, with all these worries. I'm a very prolific dreamer, and so I'd wake up worrying about the business. I think some of the things that I worry about have changed. In the beginning, I think I worried a lot about product and a lot about money, just having enough money and not owing anybody any money and incurring expenses. Now some of those things are a little bit more regular. They're easier to predict. And now some of my worries are about my team, actually. Are they getting the support they need? Are we growing at the right level for them? How are they managed? How are they held accountable? Those things have become probably my biggest worry right now. And that's partly why I've surrounded myself with other CEOs who run companies much, much larger than mine, so I can learn from them and understand how to be a good leader and how to give them the right kind of support and plan the right kind of growth. So over the years, what I worry about has shifted, but there's always worries.
How do you handle your fears today versus back when the company began?
So in the beginning, I would say I underestimated my own intuition, incredibly so. And so there were times here and there that someone would come in and offer me counsel who had maybe corporate backing or just more experience, and their perspective would diverge from mine, and then I would regret not doing my instincts. I would say now I trust my instincts more. When you're starting a business, you have to bring a kind of passion, wherewithal, and intuition about your idea, whether it's a product or a service. Trust that. Trust yourself to run the business. If I could go back, I would have told myself, trust yourself more. Listen to other people, absolutely. But if internally you feel like, I know what I need to do, I would follow that. So today I'm a lot more, I listen a lot more to my own thoughts. I still listen to other people too, who have good experience. But at the end of the day, I would say I listen to my own instincts and trust them much more than I did earlier on.
What is your advice for someone taking a chance on their dream or idea?
Well, just know that fears will be there, risks will be there. It's all like part of the big package of entrepreneurship. And it's definitely not for the faint of heart. You have to be willing to take something on and deal with hardships, not if they come, but when they come, because they will. It's not a perfect world. Production is never, ever perfect. Staffing and people are never, ever perfect. There's just problems, difficulties, and they're stressful. So go into it with your eyes open, knowing this will come. It doesn't mean your idea isn't good. It doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. It just means this is how business is. So go into it with, brace yourself for that. There'll be many good times. There'll be many difficult times too. So I would say, first of all, go into it prepared for the risk, but you can also manage the risk. And I would encourage somebody starting an idea not to take out a lot of debt unless you have a really good strategy or a really specific kind of business where that's necessary. And there are some where there are. But I would say manage your risk and try and minimize debt and do the math. That helped me with so many things, both personally and professionally. Sometimes I would want something and think it was unattainable, but then I would go into the specifics, go into the numbers, and that really helped me. And so I think as you're strategizing the next steps in your dream, whatever it is, put pencil to paper and crunch numbers and see, what would it take to earn what you need to get to the next step? How would you have to work? How long would it take? I think putting specifics into that makes something real, and then it also means you can decide, is this a risk I can take on or not? I think our first order of manufactured shoes was $30,000, and I was doing a combination of hand making on Etsy and then also selling a couple hundred dresses and tops through a cut and sew. So I could do the math and see, okay, how many months would I have to sell to pay for that first order? And that helped me know that it helped me mitigate that risk. So I felt ready when I ordered that first run of product. So take things, put them in specific, and think through, anticipate what your fears might be and what the strategy would be to overcome them. That'll help.